Good day. For people who may not know the rise of the Roman Empire, there's a story that connects Africa to the Roman Empire. And that story is the country that we know today as Tunisia. But long before Tunisia was formed, there used to be an empire there called Carthage. And Carthage had the misfortune of coming up and rising up and being at par at the time that Rome was also rising up, way back then in the 300 BC, 250 BC period. But the rise of Carthage was a problem to quite a number of Roman politicians, one particularly called Cato the Elder. Cato the Elder felt that Rome didn't need to accommodate Carthage, and he ended every speech he made with Carthage must be destroyed. Carthage must be destroyed was a refrain he used in any speech he made, even if that speech was just about the benefits of drinking ice water. Any speech he made, he ended it with Carthage must be destroyed. And ultimately, Carthage and Rome fought three wars. They call them the Punic Wars. We, the story of the Punic Wars are very interesting. That was the wars where we hear of Hannibal and then we hear of all the great generals that ended up ultimately by the Third Punic Wars led to the destruction of Carthage. The ruins of Carthage are there now, one of the great tourist sites of Tunisia, and a lot of people visit that site. But the destruction of Carthage led to the rise of Rome, and the Roman Empire lasted well over 1,000 years after that. Why do I bring this up for today's discussion? Well, it so happens that in modern day, this age and time that we live, we have our own form of politicians who are also calling for the destruction of peer rivals and countries they feel should be put in their place. In America here, we have people who have always advocated for the destruction of the Soviet Union first and now Russia. So there's always a lot of people politicians who would always say Russia should be destroyed. At least if we don't even have many of them, one has a face and his name is Lindsey Graham in America. Yeah, he's a senator. He believes in the complete and total destruction of Russia. At least also another one is Kaya Kallas, who believes that Russia should be dismembered, destroyed, dismembered into small constituent states. So there are a lot of people who feel that Russia should be destroyed. And that's the project that has been going on for well over 30 years. Another politician, too, in this age and time, who also has the destruction of another country well in sight, is Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel has, for the past 40 years of his political career, advocated for the destruction of Iran. He has come up with all manners of excuses why Iran should be destroyed. He calls them every name, and anytime and any place he has an opportunity, he will advocate for the destruction of Iran. Ultimately, he pushed himself a little bit too far recently. He initiated the 12-day war after meticulous planning over several years, and he felt the full wrath of the Iranian missiles rain down on Tel Aviv and rain down on Israel at a level never seen since the creation of Israel. Well, going into China now, we have a lot of politicians who want China to be destroyed. Contained, the word they use is contained. They want China to be contained, and for that it has become an obsessive policy of some of the policymakers in the Pentagon, in all those beautiful buildings that line the mall. If you go to Washington, D.C., where decisions are being made regarding the destinies of man in far-flung places like South Sudan, and other countries, when you walk through those houses and those beautiful, quiet buildings in Washington, D.C., you just don't know whose destiny is being shaped and being planned there. But one that comes up all the time is China. The strategy to contain China has been a long one, and it is for that reason that China makes the strategic decisions that they make, especially as regards to its access to petrol, its access to its electrification process, its emphasis on hydrocarbon, hydroelectricity, its emphasis on solar power and renewables. All this has shaped the way that China responds because of this policy of containment. China is getting ready for a war that America is bringing to its doorsteps. And that war is coming because recently, 2 days ago particularly, a top-ranking Pentagon official, it has been attributed to Peter Hegseth, but it is not Peter Hegseth. A Pentagon official asked Japan, Australia, and Korea to define the roles they will play should a confrontation ever come up between China and Taiwan. What they are saying is that Japan should tell them their role. I mean, Japan and Australia and North South Korea should tell America their roles, what roles they intend to play, what kind of military contributions they're going to make should a war come up between China and America. The excuse will be that China is going to take Taiwan, so Taiwan is the excuse. Elbridge Colby, the U.S. Undersecretary for Defense for policy, like I said, policies that affect the destinies of people all over the world, but you don't know. They happen in quiet rooms in Washington, D.C. So Eldridge Colby has been pushing the matter during the recent talks with defense officials of both countries. A report has come out in the newspapers. Australia and Japan and South Korea are in a very interesting place because while they are being used as staging posts and as possible locations and allies because they have military treaties with America, they are also they have found themselves in a quagmire because at this point in time and in history, one of their greatest trading partners in these countries I've just called is China. As I'm making this video now, the Australian Prime Minister just landed in China for a 6-day visit. 6 days. Albanese will be in China to meet with Xi Jinping and to fashion out ways of expanding the relationship between China and Australia. This is happening at the same time that I'm making this video. Australia and American militaries are actually having a drill. In fact, there's a drill going on now between the countries, 3 countries and America. The Transportation Command, Transcom of America, is having drills with Japan, South Korea, and Philippines on how to improve logistics and distribute armaments and military hardware should that war ever happen. But even then, already with Australia, now, as this video is been going on, as Albanese is landing in China, America is preparing for war against China. China has slowly, in a very calm, cool way, built a relationship with all these countries that have become challenging to them. It's like the man who is very important to your salaries and your well-being, but it's also someone you fear. Because China is the largest trading partner of not only Australia, but all of ASEAN, the Association of Southeastern Asian countries. The relationship between Australia and China has blossomed over the past 20 years, that to the extent that because of that relationship and because of that extensive trade, While the world was going through recession for almost 30 years in a row, Australia never saw a depression. Why? Because Australia was selling ore, iron, copper, things that helped in the development of China in this past decade, this past generation, 30 years, that China grew and extensively. Cities like Shenzhen, cities like Shanghai just grew out of, just became world leading cities. It is said that in China, they use in 3 years the amount of concrete, the same amount of concrete that America used in 100 years. That's the kind of demand for steel, demand for copper, demand for all those things that are very important, very available in China, in Australia. Besides that, Australia is a big agricultural country and they also export cotton, they export beef, they export beer, they export wine to China. The relationship between Australia and China has made China to be the biggest trading partner, and almost 30% of Australia's exports go to China. They are tied and interlinked with China. And for 2 years, they got to know how powerful China is to them, because what happened was that during the years of COVID, the previous prime minister accused China. He bloated out the same rhetoric that President Donald Trump then had stated, which was that China was the source of COVID. China took not too lightly to that accusation, and China stopped all trade with Australia, and that damaged Australian economy. So to the point where they threw out that prime minister in the next election and brought in Albanese. Albanese has visited China twice now. This will be his second visit. So you can see when a country has two-way trade with you that comes to the tune of almost $360 billion, they contribute 30% of your export. They are really important to you. But at the same time, the Chinese also have been pushing their military and showing their military power and their military strength. And the Chinese also now are able to project power. Recently, they held drills, military drills in the Tasmanian Sea. The Australians didn't even know that the Chinese were there. So the Americans and the British, who have always had an interest in projecting themselves everywhere, recently, during that time of COVID, or in 2021, when relationship between China and Australia was cold, they took that opportunity to form an alliance called AUKUS, Australia, United Kingdom, and American Strategic Treaty, where they are to provide nuclear submarines, 5 or 6 of them, Virginia-class nuclear submarines, to the Australians to be able to contribute in surrounding China. The nuclear submarines, nuclear-powered submarines, does not necessarily mean that they will have nuclear weapons, but who are we fooling? America it's not a complete agenda. It will have to be able to shoot nuclear capable missiles, which they can always procure and purchase either from Great Britain or from America. Another set of people and countries that are being called upon to contribute to their own military quota towards containing China are the countries of ASEAN. But like Australia also, China has already built strong economic roots with ASEAN. Last year, two-way trade between ASEAN and China was to the tune of almost $1 trillion. And they just finished a Southeast Asia and ASEAN conference in Malaysia. And at that conference, they are now about to sign what they call the Free Trade Agreement 3.0. The Free Trade Agreement 3.0 will mean that there will be almost zero tariffs between ASEAN countries and China. These countries already have almost two-way trade that amounts to $1 trillion. Trade between ASEAN and China has made ASEAN China's largest trading partner. So while China is bearing and slowly building roots in ASEAN, in these same countries, the countries of ASEAN have been called up upon to help destroy China. That, in essence, simply means that they're calling them to destroy themselves. We are watching this space, and we are watching how this war between America and China, which I have said will come, whatever means, because this is the thing. Recently, there was a clampdown on the Russian assets, in sovereign assets held up in the West, 300 billion. The Chinese are huge investors in the American treasuries to the tune of 500. I think they are worth about, because they've been drawing down, selling off their treasuries and their bonds, it's just about 800 billion now. I have a theory that America will not want China to continue to sell their shares, and that at the point where to get to 500 trillion of continuous sales, because China is no more buying American treasuries. They are rather buying gold, and they're investing the money through mechanisms like the Belt and Road Initiative. They are now finding other means for their money than parking it in American treasuries and empowering America to continue to fund wars. What they've done is that they have decided that they're not going down that road again, and they are selling their treasuries. Selling treasuries is an unfriendly act by America's viewpoint. And I sincerely believe that by the time the Chinese sell those treasuries to the tune of holding only $500 billion worth of American treasuries, a war will be triggered. If for nothing else, so that America can seize that money. After all, they seized the money of Russia, they seized the money of Venezuela, and they also seized the money of Iran. If you hold American treasuries now, you are not in a good position to be challenging America. Countries like Saudi Arabia, countries like Qatar, all those countries that hold huge volumes of American debt have a problem. So the second reality now is those ones who want Russia to be destroyed. Their voices have become stronger, their voices have become more stringent, and none is more stringent than that of Frederick Mites. It has emerged, finally, that the Ukrainians have finally started to shoot cruise missiles manufactured purportedly in Ukraine into Russia. Even recently, a German general was stating how their contribution to helping Ukraine stand up to Russia is bearing fruit through this cruise missile program. The Russians are not taking lightly to it. The Russians feel that an attempt to destroy Russia had already happened in the 1940s. They remember it. They lost 28 million people to that enterprise. And they don't take kindly to the Germans. Frederick Mites these days is being looked at as the modern day Hitler. He wants the destruction of Germany, of Russia, and their proxy in that project is Ukraine. The irony is that what they are doing to Ukraine is so not too nice, because Ukraine provides the bodies, and the British, the French, the Europeans that hate the gods of the Russians provide the materials and the means, the diplomatic cover, and all the things that Ukraine has on its side as an advantage, but it isn't helping Ukraine. Even as I am making this video, drones and missiles are raining down heavily on Ukraine. Recently, the president of America relented to the continuous pressure of the neocons and all the Russophobic politicians in America, insisting, because I have said many times, is a human being. One thing people don't understand is that human beings have their preferences and their peccadillos, and they also have all those human flaws. They have envy, they have hatred, and I know one thing for sure. Donald Trump wants revenge against the Ukrainian people. I've said it, I will continue to say it. Donald Trump is not sold on this Ukraine project. But the realities of politics means he has to weave and dodge and swerve among the people who want Ukraine to win this war, who want Russia to be destroyed. And because of that, he is finding mechanisms and ways to support the Ukrainian. Already, Zelensky just announced that finally American arms are flowing back again into Ukraine. But this is happening at a time that Ukraine is still losing a lot of ground, a lot. And they just don't seem to have any solution to the continuous rain of drones and missiles. That project to destroy Russia seems not to be moving very well in the right direction, especially as Russia has increased its industrial output, increased its economic output to the point where its growth, it has a 4% GDP growth. If you contrast that to it, the supporters of Ukraine and the people who want the destruction of Russia, their GDP growth in Europe is barely, if you take it collectively, it's barely above 1%. The countries that even achieve 1% are few, and they are the ones far away from this war. The ones like France and Britain and Germany have been affected and impacted very dearly by this war. They are just doing their little best to stay out of recession. And yet there is bolster. They want the destruction of Ukraine, of Russia. Then going to the other man who wants the destruction of Iran at all costs. Netanyahu recently visited Donald Trump. We really don't know what happened or what. But he did come. He came and he proposed the Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump. He praised and wheedled Donald Trump, and he made a lot of nice gestures towards Donald Trump. It wasn't lost on a lot of people. It seems like he wants Donald Trump to go back to the theater of Iran and help again. One thing came out and one thing was clear and was proven. Israel does not have the capacity to take on Iran alone. They just don't. The Iranian missiles that rained down on Israel were a reality from a nightmare. They didn't see it coming. We even have situations where we saw confrontation between the Mossad general, the head of Mossad, and the head of Minister of Internal Affairs, Internal Security and Internal Affairs, Ben Gvir. They had a confrontation over this lack of information as to the potency of Iranian missiles. So now, what did he come for? He came possibly to convince Donald Trump that they should go back to revisit this Iran matter and finish it once and for all. Ostensibly, they came for the Gaza peace ceasefire. That is a sad situation that is so hard for the world to bear, and it's so hard for a lot of people to talk about. And the proposal regarding the ceasefire and how Gaza should be treated going forward has brought about images and accusations of wanting to put a concentration camp in Gaza. The interesting thing is that President Donald Trump seems to align his ideas with that of Netanyahu. The Gaza issue is doing a lot of damage to America. These days, young Jews in New York, in Columbia, in Harvard universities are the ones demonstrating. It becomes so hard for Donald Trump to make a case. We see where university graduating students leave the whole graduation and are calling for justice for the people of Gaza. So it's damaging America's reputation. America is fighting back and protecting Israel as best as it can. It has recently put sanctions on the head of the United Nations Human Rights Council that has been calling to the Israelis to be held to account. It has put sanctions on the ICC, which are called the actions of Netanyahu genocide. America is doing everything to protect Israel. It has also put some form of sanctions on South Africa, told the South African ambassador in America that he's persona non grata, all in response to those people who have been criticizing Israel's actions in Gaza. And the way Israel reads it is that this Gaza thing, the only people standing up to them and challenging them is Iran. And for that reason, Iran must be destroyed. That may just be the full fulcrum of their discussions when he visited, even though Trump, knowing the damage that the Gaza issue is causing to American diplomacy and American respect and standing worldwide, did try to get him to make a ceasefire. We are hoping that that happens. This is where I end my video for today. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. If you have any comments regarding my opinions expressed, please leave them in the comment section. Like and share, and see you in my next video.